Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Renu Arora, former Head Education and Training Division, NISCARE, New Delhi. Today we are going to talk on the module Information Sources in Social Sciences. This is from the paper Social Science Information System. With regard to the objectives of this module, we'll be studying about the background information and we'll try to define information sources in general. We'll try to explain types of information sources. As you have already studied in some of the other papers, there are three categories of information sources: primary, secondary and tertiary. To distinguish variety of information sources, we will have to know about print, electronic and other sources. Important general and traditional information sources will also be discussed. We will also specifically identify the overall information sources in the discipline of social sciences. We will also try to identify the databases and data services in social sciences. And lastly, we will try to know the specific guidelines as how users may take advantage of the information sources in the discipline of social sciences. First of all, we have to know what is information. Information is processed data, and an information source can be a book or a website or any other piece of information found elsewhere. There are several means by which information is recorded for use by an individual or an organization. It means by which a person is informed about something or knowledge is transmitted to someone. It could be an individual, a group of people or an organization. It comes from virtually anywhere: personal experience, books, articles, expert opinion, encyclopedias, the web, etc. Information sources. As already mentioned, information is processed data. An information source can be a book or a website. Information sources are the various means by which information is recorded for use by an individual or an organization. It is the means by which a person is informed about something or knowledge is availed for someone, a group of people or an organization. Information sources can be observations, people, speeches, documents, pictures, organizations, etc. Information sources can be in print form, non-print form, or electronic media format, etc. Categorization of information sources. The sources of information are broadly classified into documentary sources and non-documentary sources. Categorization of information sources refers to putting the sources in proper order. All recorded sources of information, irrespective of their contents and form, come under documentary sources. These may be published or unpublished, in print or in electronic form. Documentary sources can be categorized as primary, secondary, and tertiary sources on the basis of appearance of information. In primary sources, information appears first. Secondary sources come out the next or second in queue, and tertiary sources are the last to appear. That is why the name tertiary sources. On the other hand, the non-documentary sources of information can be defined as those sources and resources of information that are not contained in any document. The non-documentary sources comprise of formal and informal sources of information. Documentary sources. Documentary sources are defined as records relating to individuals or group of individuals that have been generated in the course of their daily lives. This is not to say that documentary sources do not require a structured approach. On the contrary, the use of letters, diaries and the like need a carefully carried out methodology in order to extract their relevance for the understanding of society. The documentary sources of information such as books, periodicals, articles, dictionaries, newspapers, dissertations, guidebooks, directories, etc. are organized into quite basic and fundamental categories based on their information content. Depending upon their content and organizational level, these can be grouped into primary, secondary, and tertiary sources of information. As already informed, there are three types of information sources. These are primary, secondary, and tertiary sources of information. There are various means by which information is recorded for by use by an individual or an organization. Information can come from virtually anywhere: personal experience, books, articles, expert opinion, encyclopedias, the web, etc. The type of information needed changes depending on its application. Individuals generate information on a daily basis as they go about their work. In academic institutions, staff and students, they consult various sources of information, and as a result, new information can also be generated. The source of the information to consult is usually determined by the type of information that is sought by a particular user. Primary sources. The primary sources are original materials on which other research studies are based. Primary sources report a discovery or share new information. They present first-hand accounts of an information relevant to an event. They present information in its original form, not interpreted or condensed or evaluated by other writers. Examples of primary sources are articles published in scholarly journals, eyewitness reports, journalistic reports, financial reports, government documents, archaeological and biological evidence, court records, ephemeral and minutes of meetings, etc. The definition of a primary source may vary depending upon the discipline or context. A diary would be a primary source because it is written directly by the individual writing in the diary. Interviews are primary sources because the individuals talk about the topic directly from what he or she knows about it. Other examples may be grey literature, which is also important primary source material not available through the usual system of publication, that is, books or periodicals and distribution. Further examples are committee commission reports, notifications issued by government, conference proceedings, data exchange, environmental impact statements, oral presentations, market research reports, online documents, working papers, etc. Secondary sources. Secondary sources are not evidence but rather commentary on and discussion of evidence. A secondary source of information is one that is created by someone who did not have first-hand experience or did not participate in the events or conditions being researched. Secondary sources describe, analyze, interpret, evaluate, comment on, and discuss the evidence provided by primary sources. Examples of secondary sources are news, digests, monographs, users' manuals, etc. Tertiary sources. Tertiary sources are intended only to provide an overview of what the topic includes, that is, its basic terminology, and often references for further reading. Some reference material and textbooks are considered tertiary sources when their chief purpose is to list, summarize, or simply repackage ideas or other information. Tertiary sources consist of information which is a distillation and collection of primary and secondary sources. Generally, tertiary sources are not considered to be acceptable material on which to base academic research. Tertiary sources are usually not credited to a particular author. Besides this, tertiary sources are Firstly, works which list primary and secondary resources in a specific subject area. Secondly, works which index, organize, and compile citations to and show secondary and sometimes primary sources. Thirdly, materials in which the information from secondary source has been digested, reformatted, and condensed to put it into a convenient, easy to read form. And fourthly, sources which are once removed in time from secondary sources. Examples of tertiary sources include dictionaries and encyclopedias, indexing and abstracting services, annual reviews, directories, guides to literature, Wikipedia, and similar user-contributed online encyclopedias and reference materials, as well as various digests and school books. We can differentiate primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. For example, some of the primary sources are autobiographies, correspondence that could be email or letters, descriptions of travel, diaries, eyewitnesses, oral histories, literary works, interviews, personal narratives, first-hand newspaper and magazine accounts of events, legal cases, treaties, statistics surveys and opinion polls, scientific data transcripts, journal articles, records of organizations and government agencies, original works of literature, art or music, cartoons, postcards, posters, map, paintings, photographs, films, etc. On the other hand, some of the secondary sources are biographies, encyclopedias, dictionaries, handbooks, textbooks and monographs on a topic, literary criticism and interpretation, history and historical criticism, political analysis, review of law and legislation, essays on morals and ethics, analysis of social policy, study and teaching material, articles such as literature reviews, commentaries, research articles in all subject disciplines, criticism of works of literature, art and music, etc. And besides third category, that is tertiary sources usually are chronologies, classifications, dictionaries, encyclopedias, directories, guidebooks and manuals, population register statistics, fact books, abstracts, indexes, bibliographies, manuals or guidebooks, etc. We have a variety of information sources. Information sources could be in print form or non-print form. In fact, most of the information sources that we are using are in print form. But then of late, the non-print form, that is the electronic form, are also becoming very popular. And we will be studying about the various print forms of information sources in the subsequent slides. Let's take a look at the variety of information sources. As already mentioned, sources could be in print or non-print form. And we have put these in three categories: sources in print form, sources in electronic form, and other sources. Firstly, sources in print form. These could be speeches, patents, photographs, newspaper articles, journal articles, theses and dissertations, survey research, which could be marketing survey, public opinion poll, etc. Proceedings of meetings, conferences and symposia, original documents, that is birth certificates, wills, marriage licenses, trial transcripts, etc. or records of organizations, government agencies. For example, annual reports of organizations, treaties, constitutions, government documents, etc. In the next category, that is the electronic information sources, we have the internet, email communication, interviews, video recordings, for example, television programs, then audio recordings, for example, radio programs, websites, communications through social networking applications, for example, Facebook, blogs, RSS, YouTube, etc. And the third category, which is having the miscellaneous kind of information sources, these are diaries, letters, artifacts, for example, coins, inscriptions, rock art, wall decorations, manuscripts, etc. Works of architecture, literature, and music. For example, paintings, sculptures, musical scores, buildings, etc. So, we have a variety of information sources in this way. Let us now examine non-documentary sources of information. The main categories of non-documentary sources are institutions or organizations, human beings, mass media other than the print media, and the internet. The non-documentary sources of information can be defined as those sources and resources of information that are not contained in any document. The non-documentary source comprises of formal and informal sources. Formal sources includes information of research organizations, societies, industries, government departments, universities, consultants, etc. On the other hand, informal sources include human sources, conversation with colleagues, consultants, experts, resource persons, mass media, etc. Let's take a look at some important information sources used by the librarians. Firstly, almanac. Almanac is usually a one-volume work with statistics and a compilation of specific facts. For example, Word Almanac and Book of Facts and Information Please Almanac. Secondly, atlas. Atlas is a book of maps and geographical information. For example, Atlas of American History. Next one is a bibliography. Bibliography is a compilation of sources of information which provides literature on a specific subject or by a specific author. For example, books in print and bibliography of African literatures. Next one, that is biographical dictionary. It is a source of information about the lives of people. For example, current biography and who's who in America. Another source, concordance. It is an alphabetical listing of keywords or phrases found in the work of an author or work of a collection of writings. For example, topical Bible concordance. Then we have the most popular information source, that is a dictionary. A dictionary defines words and terms, confirms spellings, definition and pronunciation, used to find out how words are used, helps to locate synonyms and antonyms, and to trace the origin of words. For example, Webster's Dictionary. We have directories too. Directory lists names and addresses of individuals, companies, organizations, and institutions. For example, Encyclopedia of Associations. Another source, encyclopedia. Encyclopedia covers knowledge and branches of knowledge in a comprehensive manner and provide broad survey of a topic written by specialists. For example, Word Encyclopedia. Then we have the gazetteers. Gazetteer is a dictionary of geographical places, not exactly maps. For example, Webster's New Geographical Dictionary. Then the guidebook. Guidebook provides detailed descriptions of places intended primarily for the traveler, geographical facts plus maps. For example, Great Lakes Guidebook. Then we have the handbooks. A handbook treats one broad subject in brief summary of a subject. For example, Handbook of American Popular Culture. Besides this, we have the indexes and abstracts. An index is an information source that indexes all the literature that has been published over a period of time. On the other hand, an abstract carries out all the functions that an index does that is giving all the bibliographical details of the particular publication, and it gives a brief summary or an abstract too. Then we have the manuals. Manuals are popularly referred to as do-it-yourself kind of publications. A manual gives instructions on carrying out a function or an activity from start to finish. For example, when you buy a new mobile phone or a computer system or any piece of equipment, along with that comes a manual which will tell you how to start it or install it and how to carry out various activities. Then we have statistics and government documents. Whatever has taken place over a certain period of time is shown in the statistics and the government documents. For example, we have the International Statistical Yearbook, etc. Then there are yearbooks. Yearbooks usually tell us about the events that have taken place in a particular year. For example, Manorama Yearbook. And lastly, we have the internet search engines. In the modern times, internet search engines have become the most popular information source because by just one click, we can find out any information that we require. We have, for example, Google, Yahoo, etc. Next in the category are the electronic sources. Through internet, search engines like Google, Yahoo, Bing, MSN, etc. are not direct sources of information, but these sites provide links to the actual and full text sources of information in general. Besides that, we have the e-resources or the electronic resources. Let's take a look at some of the e-resources or what they are. An e-resource is material which requires computer mediation in order to access the contents and make it useful. Both online and offline resources such as online material and CD-ROMs fall within the scope of e-resources. The term e-resource refers to all the products which a library provides through a computer network. The electronic resources are also known as online information resources, covering bibliographic databases, electronic reference books, search engines for full text books, and digital collections of data. They include both born digital material which has been produced directly online. For example, e-journals, databases and print resources which have been scanned and digitized are the e-resources. The electronic resources, e-journals, online databases are not owned by the libraries as they own the print material only. Ownership of electronic resources lies with the providers of these resources. Access to electronic resources may be free via internet or may be available against a fee. Some of the examples of e-resources are magazines, encyclopedias, newspapers, journals or articles published in them. These may be accessed on internet-connected devices such as computers, tablets, smartphones, etc. There are different ways of explaining social science information. Social science information may be explained, for example, it could be literature or topics that are of interest to the social scientists. Secondly, literature used by social scientists. And thirdly, literature written by social scientists. In the social sciences, indexed English language journal publications coexist with books, literature published locally, and non-scholarly literature. The areas of interest of social scientists include various issues which generate public or social discussion. This first interpretation of social science widens the scope of information sources as it suggests to include many general books and periodicals written for laymen as information handbooks or for the purpose of generating discussion or controversies. As a matter of fact, social scientists use a large variety of information sources in the form of written records like newspapers, annual reports, government records, personal letters and diaries, manifestos of political parties, etc. One can interpret that literature used by the social scientists is wider in scope than literature written by the social scientists. Also, social science information can be identified as works written by social scientists addressed to other social scientists and dealing with matters related to mutual interest. In fact, there is a definitional problem when we try to identify social science information. Let's now examine grouping social science information sources. For the purpose of discussion, social science literature or information sources in social sciences can be broadly divided into four groups. These could be journal articles, books, national literature, and non-scholarly literature. Journal articles refer to internationally oriented, largely English language, peer-reviewed articles published in journals. The second category is books, which can be generally considered multidisciplinary in nature as compared to scholarly journals. National literature is a form of social science literature that is produced within a country. It has been said that unlike natural sciences, social sciences are more concerned with their social context, plainly, because society is their major field of study. And lastly, non-scholarly literature, that is the last category. These are generally directed at non-specialists such as general readers and meant for enlightenment and knowledge transfer to non-scholarly public. International databases and data archives. Just like the other disciplines, social sciences also have international databases and data archives. The international databases and data archives are essential tools for overcoming knowledge divides between different areas of the world and for opening up the possibilities of international and interdisciplinary research. The development of global research programs on the environment and its interactions with demographic, socioeconomic, and behavioral changes triggered growth in the number and quality of international social science databases. Data from satellites and geographic information systems have become more widespread and more important for social and natural sciences. In fact, a large number of databases, etc., are available, details of which can be seen in your e-material on the same subject area. To conclude, students, let's now summarize what we have learned in this module. In this module, we have discussed need for information sources in libraries. We have also learned that information sources can be documentary and non-documentary. Variety of information sources include print, non-print, and electronic sources. Types of information sources are primary, secondary, and tertiary. There is definitely need for electronic sources for modern day users. Importance of information sources in social sciences has also been highlighted. Category of information sources in social sciences includes journal articles, books, national literature, and non-scholarly literature. Lastly, international databases and data services in social sciences have also been discussed. The details regarding the kinds of journals, books, and other sources of information in social sciences have been given in detail in your e-course material, which also has references and web bibliographies, etc. Thank you.